Hello everybody, I am Jeffrey Hauser, author of the Learn With series. A colleague of mine recently asked how he could do two-way binding in Angular for a dynamically generated component in TypeScript. And Angular does not provide an easy way, but with some work you can get it working. I did some rabbit holing and experimentation around this concept because of the question, and I'm turning it into this podcast series, this screencast series about two-way binding. This 7th episode of the series is going to look at binding from the parent component down into the child component, and we're going to use a JavaScript proxy to do that. This isn't any Angular magic. Proxies are built directly into JavaScript. A proxy is basically a wrapper around an object that allows you to provide extra functionality around the base object without changing the base object. So, if you've been following along so far, I've rolled this code back to what we were at episode 4. So I'm ignoring the code changes we did to do two-way binding with differs, and ignoring the code changes we did to do two-way binding with a set method. So I have one-way binding implemented here from the child back up to the component, but now we want to use a JavaScript proxy to go from the parent down to the child. And proxies will not work on simple values. They will only work on objects. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this value into an object. So value 1 is now an object with something named value. And there's a string there. So we change how the default value is set in the child after it's created. We want to change this, how our component bubbles up from the child to the parent. So that should all be good. Now, a proxy is a wrapper around an object that allows us to give it more functionality, and we're actually going to create a proxy handler around this base set method in the component. So we don't want to change any functionality for any of these. So handler, I'm messing up, set object prop value. So set method is a function. Something is being screwy. Okay. Okay. Whatever syntax things I missed before, I've now fixed. So we're not really changing any of functionality or values, changing how our internal object works. We're just adding some extra functionality. So this is what we do. This, whenever the handler is set up on the proxy, we'll do this dot value 6 equals new proxy. This value 1, not value 6, and the handler. So This is just a borderline a straight pass-through. Our set method gets the object that's being modified, the property that's being modified, and the new value. And we're just setting it. And we are going to do if prop equals value 1 and component ref dot instance dot value not equals object prop, meaning the value has changed. We are going to instance dot value equals object prop. And now what is this error we're getting here? And actually we want to return true. Oh, and that got rid of the error there. So to know that everything was set properly. So let's dissect this. What is this all doing here? We're creating a handler, which is just a different object, and we're overriding the set method. This is a global override, which will work every time the property in value 1 is set. It'll call this method instead of just directly updating that value. We change the value because we don't really want to change that functionality, and people using the base object, it should be transparent to them that we're doing this extra coding. And then in the case that is a value we want to change and pass down to the child component, in which case it is our prop is actually, that should probably be value. So if it's changed, which is this second condition, and if it is the property we want to send down, then we reference the instance of the component ref and send it down. And let's see, this all compiled. So I forgot to change the HTML. So this would be, oh, nope, not this one. I want the app component HTML. Value 1.value. Okay, there we go. So actually, let's, parent is automatically changed. We know that. We've seen that working. And that hasn't changed our approach there. Of course. So let's throw a debugger in here to make sure. See what's going on. There, I added a space. Prop is value. Let's see what object.prop is. Oh, I already got it in there. So it has changed, and it should go. And it should be changing the child. In this case, oh, that's what I did. Boom. So instead of referencing the property, I accidentally grabbed the handler. That works, and that works. It's just one little typo with IntelliJ autocomplete. So to summarize, we're using a JavaScript proxy to wrap our value 1 object, and we're passing it this specialized handler, which is basically a replacement object, and we're overriding the generic set method, which will set the value in our underlying object from the proxy. And it does a check if we're changing the value that we want to bind downwards, down the hierarchy component chain. We go ahead and set that if things have changed. and that's how it all works. That's how this approach works. I actually, of the three approaches I've looked at, differs a set method in this. I like this one the best because all our code is really self-contained, close to where we've actually created the component instance. And if for some reason we wanted to encapsulate this or somehow, we'd be able to do that. So that's my preference and what I like best in of the three options I've reviewed in this series. If you're enjoying what you're seeing, please check out my book series at learnwith.com, which gives you a lot of information about how I use Angular every day to build enterprise applications for clients.